Good evening, everyone. I am Vaikund. On behalf of the Global Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar, Environment, Social Governance, the key theme for investors for India. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, Sustain. Firstly, I'd like to introduce our organization, the host for this webinar. ICEN SDGs is an international think tank headquartered in Hyderabad, India, having associates in Brussels, Vienna, the EU, and Colombia in South America. We aim for the advancements of science and technology through new age research and development, while innovating and spurring innovation to foster good governance and support businesses for the social good. ICEN SDGs serves for enabling businesses and organizations to turn zero waste, zero carbon, and carbon neutral. We implement capacity building programs and awareness campaigns and provide advisory services to facilitate the transition from a linear to a circular economy. ICEN SDGs has trained over 400 plus individuals and organizations from all over the globe, spanning over 50 countries from Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, and North America for implementation of circular economy in their organizations. ICEN SDGs, in association with Climate KIC Europe, conducted Climathon for startups and have since mentored 37 plus circular economy and sustainability startups from India, Canada, Bangladesh, and other countries. In 2021, ICEN SDGs also developed the International Alliance on Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals, which brings together top government officials, funding agencies, organizations, businesses, international experts from European unions and SAARC countries on one platform to march together to meet the UN Global Goals SDG 2030. ICEN SDGs is also an advisor and part of the Committee on Circular Economy, Niti Aayog, Government of India. I'd like to give you a brief about what we will talk about today. Just a short, quick paragraph. Environment, social responsibility, and corporate governance have of late emerged as key themes for investors in India. The asset size of ESG funds has ballooned nearly 5 times to 12,300 crores over the last couple of years. The National Stock Exchange also launched NSE Prime, a framework that allows companies to submit to standards of corporate governance that are higher than those required by existing regulations. As ESG funds gain momentum in India, companies will be forced to improve governance and ethical practices and act with greater social and environmental responsibility. As the policy framework changes, companies that do not alter business models or become more environmentally sustainable could have their revenue and profits impacted in the long term. And with that, I'd like to hand over the platform to Dr. Shalini Sharma, who will be taking us through the ESG booklet developed by ICEN SDGs.
Thank you, Vaikund. Just to give a background and to set more details, we will just have a look that we have developed an ESG power guide. This guide will help any or everyone to know what exactly ESG is. So this guide is developed by in collaboration with Sanshodhan and ICEN SDGs together to provide a knowledge to everybody on the landscape that ESG provides for every industry. Moreover, I'll give you just in review today that what we cover in this ESG booklet and how this booklet can help everyone across. Very soon, this booklet will be available on the Sanshodhan platform for everybody to access. So in this booklet, we have covered that what environment, social and governance aspects are, what is the landscape in India and globally, what are the different industries and the consultants and the advisory service firms they are doing in this area. We are also talking about that why ESG should be reported and for whom it should be reported. Then we have talked about a bit about what is for whom, like conglomerates, industries, investors, bankers, what can be the kind of green projects, and how the CSR and sustainability departments, what role they can play while reporting. Then we have talked about a bit about the challenges, and we have also put up the frameworks, like what are the frameworks now available in India, especially after SEBI that is mandating top 1,000 listed companies to report their ESG every year, and that is mandated from financial year 22-23. And we have talked a bit about those frameworks. Also, then we have taken up a step ahead and we talked about the innovation in ESG area. how these things can be eased out. Because if we say 1,000 industries, they are reporting their ESG every year, and even one report is of around 100 pages, then multiplied by 1,000, whether the physical reports, they are really going to serve any purpose into the ESG landscape, that's a big question. So that's what we talked about into the innovation. We have also talked about ESG monitoring and reporting, how this can make a difference. And there are some case studies how this is going in the international level. So starting with this, why this guide is needed. And of course, our purpose is to create more awareness and provide the guidance to the industries and the users. And then we provided the definitions. Indian landscape, that's very important. I think we will hear a lot more about BRSR, that's it, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. That is from Ministry of Corporate Affairs and from you today. And then we talked in detail about the environment, social and governance aspects. We talked about why ESG is gaining a global attention. So the most important thing is that in India, a lot of companies, they were using the international frameworks till now. There was like GRI, SASB, CDP, all those kind of frameworks were there. So whether the Indian framework that is now mandatory from SEBI, it going to give a lot of competition to these existing frameworks, the international frameworks? That's a kind of a question. Of course, industries would not like to go for 2 or 3 different type of reportings. So that's very, very important aspects. I think the development that's happening at this point of time for mandatory report ESG reporting next financial year onwards, that's, I think, really a game changing for Indian ESG scenario. Then we have talked about what ESG reporting can have, and we have talked about the process, a little bit about the details, not really all the sections, but of course what there should be. And then there are channels of ESG reporting. And then we have talked about the challenges and opportunities. What is there for the industries who are reporting, and what is there for other people who are facilitating the reporting, and what is there for the government to look at. We have then also talked quite a lot about the challenges, how there are many times there a lot of dependence on the qualitative reporting. If we say the people, industries, they are reporting more on the quality aspects, more on the finance aspects, but this report that is mandated by the government of India is more asking about the data backed reporting. So that's a kind of a scenario that we are going to face now. And industries really need to take care of the data backed reporting now. We have talked about the ESG reporting, some of the case studies we presented, how NASDAQ is doing, how China is doing, and how probably India can do. And then ESG frameworks around the globe, we provided a bit backgrounds that what has been happening since a long time. And if you see these all frameworks, there was quite a lot of data that was going on the international platform, which was quite a good thing. But now India and Indian government is looking for this kind of data-backed impact reports. Then ESG reporting and digital ESG monitoring system, that is where we are heading to, and we are quite fan of this, because from my company Sanshodhan, we believe on building the digital systems. We build the digital environmental systems, monitoring systems, reporting systems. And as I have already worked for quite a lot of time for sustainability reporting, so that is one of the area where we are really that how we can ease out the digital ESG reporting, then monitoring and management at the short and long term. Then we have presented some of the case studies that how industries can benefit out of it or learn from the other countries and existing reporting systems, and what really they can do inside their industry and for reporting to SEBI to fulfill the compliances. And that's all. I think this is like 50-page, 40-page report that provides quite a lot of details, and we will be happy to share with you as soon as you suggest. Moreover, by next week, it should be available online for everybody to have a look. So with this, I stop my presentation here. Over to Vakunt to please introduce the speakers and start this event.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini. Our first speaker for the day is Mr. Balakumar Thangavelu. Mr. Balakumar heads the multi-pronged efforts of outreach, Cognizant's employee volunteering program for India. Mr. Balakumar is the key strategist for volunteering efforts of Cognizant outreach that spans over 13 cities and 7 states in India, with a vision of improving everyday life. He also heads the Cognizant Foundation Committee for Coimbatore, facilitating eligible proposals from NGOs with Cognizant Foundation and anchors implementation of the project using CSR funds. He also leads the UN SDG integration initiative with Cognizant, supply chain and human rights transformation for Cognizant as part of Environment Social Governance Program. Mr. Balakumar played a key role in the program management, audit, and publishing of the first ESG report of Cognizant. He leads the United Nations Global Compact partnerships for Cognizant and drives actions around 10 principles of UNGC. He was in September 2021. He was also recognized as 40 under 40 ESG Leaders of India Award by India CSR. And with that, I'd like to hand over the platform to Mr. Thangavelu. Sir, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shalini and Vaikunt, for giving this opportunity. I hope I am audible and clear.
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. So, it's an interesting topic, right? ESG is the buzzword across the world, and I wanted to just share like how things are changing and how we have prepared as a corporate, and now what are the steps that we are taking is something that I wanted to share to this forum. So recently I read an article from McKinsey that there is a huge shift in the stakeholder attitude across the world, right? Everybody talks about purpose and ESG. So it is tagging along together, right? So why it is, and the McKinsey report says 70% of employees currently who wants to work demand to be working in a purposeful organization. So that's how the millennials are looking forward. So if my organization has a purpose, is it purpose driven organization? And on the other hand, right, investors, large global institutional investors are looking for investing in purposeful organizations. Is the company that I'm investing has a purpose, is a purpose driven organization? And on the other side, the customers, right, whom we work, customers are asking like, hey, am I working with a purposeful organization? So I think that the purpose is driven from all across and beyond this, over and above UN SDGs and within specific India NITI Aayog's reports, SDG reports, are all of it are coming. And as early as couple of days back, CB has published a white paper guiding the investors about an ESG framework on how can they select for Indian industries. So the compliance and regulation is also coming on the other hand, while a cultural shift has happened in the stakeholders as well, right, from employees to customers to investors. So there is currently the organization any organization have to serve the interests of multiple stakeholder groups to achieve the outcomes. So in achieving that multiple stakeholder groups, right, ESG plays a vital role. So ESG goals and ESG commitments can deliver the goals of the purpose of an organization. So that's how I see ESG is really coming up as a very, very critical component in every industry that we see across the globe. So getting deeper into Cognizant's ESG report, right? We published our first ESG report May 2021, Living Our Purpose. And like Dr. Shalini was mentioning, we being a global organization, we went in with SASB, GRA, and TCFD as our guiding frameworks for our first ESG report. And beyond our ESG report that got published under environmental actions, so we published our net zero commitment, public commitment a few months back. So Cognizant has committed to net zero calls for reduction of emission by 50% in our company's global operation and supply chain by 2030, and by 90% by 2040. And remaining will be negated with carbon offsets. And there are like few specific initiatives that I would like to highlight in our net zero goal journey, right? Aligning with climate science, one of the framework or climate science or component referred in the ESG playbook that was presented by Dr. Shalini is about science-based target initiative, right? So it's again an initiative from United Nations, where science-based target initiative clearly guides on commitment from a corporate. We have signed up our business, 1.5-degree commitment with SBTA, and we have declared to measure our carbon accounting and then declare to the SBTA initiative. So we wanted to align ourselves with the climate change across the globe. And second aspect in terms of achieving a net zero goal is to move towards more of renewable energy. So to be precise, right, like a quarter of for Cognizant energy in 2020 was across the globe was from renewable sources. So we want to partner with REBA across the globe, and we wanted to increase our renewable energy more and more. That's the second aspect that we wanted to really focus on towards achieving net zero goal. And third is about increasing the energy efficiency, right? Over the lifetime of the goal, Cognizant has started investing in our new energy efficient equipments, technologies in our owned offices and data centers throughout the world. So that is significantly reducing the energy efficiency in our day-to-day operations. So that's with respect to the carbon emission and accounting. And we have entered with a platform to start scoping out our carbon emissions, scope 1, 2, 3, and how can our supply chain really contribute towards our reducing in carbon emission or achieving a net zero goal is something that we have taken up. And the other aspect in the environment is about water conservation. So we have implemented a lot of interesting transformation in our offices in terms of water conservation and water reusing. And STPA units have been implemented to conserve a lot of water and reuse the water. So that's with respect to the environmental initiatives per se. And from a social initiative, starting from the way we hire, the training, and the learning and development opportunities for the employees within, and whom do we hire and how do we hire, the changes that we have brought into our hiring patterns, and all of it is demonstrating our social initiatives. And beyond that, we have taken a big leap step in diversity and inclusion across the globe. So we have brought in a lot of awareness and adoption of diversity and inclusion initiatives across globe in Cognizant. And giving back to community has been is in the blood of all the Indian origin, and we have been doing giving back to community through Cognizant Foundation for almost 15 years now. And the other part that I represent is Cognizant Outreach, where we strongly believe everybody has a heart to give back to society. And how can we give back to society is not everybody something that everybody knows, right? Everybody has a heart, but not everybody knows when to give, where to give, what to give, and how to give. And that's where we launched our employee volunteering platform called Outreach. Through our employee volunteering, we have been touching millions of lives across the globe, and our volunteering is active in 35 plus countries, and we record more than lakh of hours of volunteering through our employees across the globe in terms of supporting inclusion in tech and also increasing the community impact. As a recent example that I could quote, right, through our employee volunteering program, we have digitally enriched around 13,000 plus teachers and educators across India and 9 states post-pandemic. It was new normal for the teachers and educators, right, to connect online and start teaching students. Continue education through online platform was new for a lot of educators across the globe. So in India, specifically 13,500 teachers were trained in basic digital literacy to advanced digital literacy on how can they effectively deliver an online classroom session. These are some of small initiatives that we have done through our employee volunteering. And health and safety is another core component under our social initiatives, and supply chain management. How can our supply chain have right amount of policies involved, and how can they be a purposeful organization as well. So that's something that we are focusing on social initiative as well. And lastly, on the governance aspect, ethics and compliance is the core mantra for every organization, how every employee and how can stay demonstrate ethics and stay compliant in all the aspects, all the dimensions. And data security and data privacy is the other components of the governance. So that's the overarching quick run through of our ESG strategy and ESG initiatives. And you all can find time to go through our Living Our Purpose ESG report. It's available on web, Cognizance ESG report of 2020. And we'll be happy to take up any questions if you have. With that, I'll give it back to Vaikunt for the next speaker session.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Shalini, do we have any questions? Or should we move on to the next session?
I think one question I was just thinking about is we are talking about the investors, because a lot of investors, they are looking for investing into the companies with purpose. And also, if you see in India, the BRSR report is mandated for the top 1,000 listed companies. How do you think we are also having one of the other framework in India, like SEBI has come up with BRSR Lite for the companies who are not listed, but still they want to report it. So would you like to say something on how investors are thinking about implementing, investing into the companies with purpose? Any views on that?
Uh, yeah, time and again we have been listening and hearing loud voices from the investors, especially the institutional investors, right? If I may take an example of BlackRock being a large institutional investor in multiple corporates, right? BlackRock, if you happen to see, Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, and every year he writes a letter. The BlackRock CEO letter is becoming, like, a guiding light for a lot of corporates to adopt and move further, right? So in his report, and that's becoming like a guidebook as well. And I'm going through his CEO letter for the past couple of years, and every year the voice is becoming strong and louder that, are you an purposeful organization? My investors are investing in me and asking me that, am I investing in the right organization? Does that organization is purposeful organization? Does the organization have an environmental goal? Do they have a net zero goal? Do they have a human rights policy? Do they have a privacy policy? So there is a clear message from the institutional investors like BlackRock, Vanguard, have been time and again have publicly announced that, like, we need our corporates where we invest needs to demonstrate your purpose. Your ESG reports talk about it, and have you been and it's very very vocal right now. So I think, like I said, right, uh, something that which was like a nice to have is coming like a must to have. So people can't shy away anymore, and people can't really hide out anymore. So it's not just the investors. Government is coming up with regulatory bodies. So like most of you might know, right, Europe taxes the tax charges on the company based on their carbon emission. So the higher emission that you spend out, you have to pay more. So I think uh, the regulatory body is coming in, and people can't run away, shy away. It is everybody's responsibility, and it was more voluntary when UN SDGs were published, right? It was given an option for the companies. But when the 2030 goals cannot be met, and we are very far away from the 2030 goals, there is no option. It's like carrot and stick, right? We can't keep giving carrot, and sometimes the stick works. So I think the government agencies and institutional investors have taken the stick, and there is no way people can run away. So we will have to abide, and investors will keep continue to guide. The other side, the government agencies will continue to push. So that's my view, Dr. Shalini. Hope that answers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. So when we were at CII, I'll just say a few examples which are completely aligned with your whatever you said now. So we were saying that there is something called as compensatory economics. We say, and that's more related to the environmental economics. We say if every company, every organization, if they are generating their own renewable energy, say for example, even into the construction sector, even into the cement industry, even into the IT industry, if you are compensating or fulfilling your own energy requirement with renewables, if you are just rainwater, doing a rainwater harvesting equivalent to the amount of the water that you are using in your company, your premises, I think lots and lots of the issues will be getting solved within premises. If you are managing your own solid waste within the premises, throughout only, that is not really unmanageable, or it is taken by the government for the special disposals. That's another thing. But at least bear the cost of that transportation. So I think if you do only that much, lots and lots of problems will get sorted out within the premises, and there will be less burden on the city administration, less burden on the society around, and you will be not be costing the society and environment around you. So thank you. I really echo what you said. And thank you so much for being here with us.
And last but not least, right? I think it's everybody's responsibility, right? Every it's not just corporate. Every individual, every individual across the globe, for a better future, for the universe to continue to flourish and make it a place for living for the generations to come, right? I think it's everybody's responsibility. So given that. Uh, mm, Corporates have their roles to do, and individuals also have to play a role. A few initiatives. One of the initiatives that we have taken within Cognizant, right? We have launched a program called Zero Waste 30. So it's a e-learning course that we have launched for all of our employees. In the past couple of months, 30,000 of our employees have taken that course, and they have started adopting a zero waste lifestyle within them. So how can they go a little greener, a little organic, avoid plastics in their lifestyle? So we are trying to inculcate that culture within our employees and their families also. So I think it's a multidimensional approach where everybody should feel that I am responsible, and eventually when the change starts within, it cascades to the larger universe. So I think that's my the closing comment, if I have to say. Thank you once again for the opportunity, Dr.
A wonderful initiative. Thank you so much.
So our next speaker is Mr. Shreyas Jayasima. Mr. Shreyas is an advocate, arbitrator, and trained mediator based in India, and is the founding partner of Arna Law, which has led international and domestic dispute resolution practice. He has conducted several complex trials, has appeared before various high courts and the Supreme Court of India. He has also represented clients before various international and domestic arbitral tribunals and mediation fora. He's a member of the Council for the MCIA. Mr. Shreyas was a member of the LCIA Asia Pacific Users Council and is currently the co-chair of the IBA Subcommittee on Investor-State Mediation. He is also a member of the Executive Committee of the Foundation for International Arbitration Advocacy, Geneva, since 2012, and is the coordinator, UNCITRAL, National Coordination Committee of India. His practice areas include intellectual property, technology law, corporate and commercial dispute resolution, investment arbitration, constitutional law, regulatory, and fraud investigations, among many others. And with that, I'd like to hand over the platform to Mr. Shreyas. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vaikunth. Thank you, Dr. Shalini, for this kind of introduction and to be part of this panel. Apologies for the dated introduction, Vaikunth. That is an introduction which is rather long, and if I was asked, I would say just describe me as a lawyer helping change makers. Nothing more needs to be said. So in that self-introduction, as a lawyer assisting change makers, I'm privileged to lead a team of highly motivated individuals in Arna Law in India, Sima Law in Singapore, and not just at a time of frayed relationships and parties finding themselves in dispute, but well before that, in identifying, as the topic of this seminar goes, investors want to look for green business plans, entrepreneurs who want to have a more holistic approach to recognizing all stakeholders. And these are people for us for whom it is a joy to work with. Also, somewhat controversially, we believe that the net zero journey cannot be achieved without engaging with the nuclear industry. And so we have a nuclear law practice as well, apart from more traditional areas that one looks at. And for ourselves, we about maybe about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, we asked ourselves what a law practice in India should look like some years ahead from now. We didn't think it looked like the way we looked then, so we just demolished our building, moved to another place, rebuilt it. And the first thing we did was to have a fully sustainable architecture into the new physical infrastructure. I don't think any of us need to be told by governments domestically or by international organizations that we have a duty to behave and change our behaviors to be more sustainable. As Mr. Balakumar rightly said, it is the message of any ancient civilization, and certainly the message of all our grandparents bringing us up. And so just listening to that inner voice and doing right for our ecosystem is something nobody's exempt from that rule. And in that sense, as lawyers, we also decided some time ago to have a green approach. I personally have been very guilty of practicing international arbitration, which involves a lot of flights, huge carbon footprints across the world. But within this world as well, we have tried to adopt more sustainable practices. So, and I was privileged earlier this year to coordinate a panel on the sidelines of COP26 in Glasgow, where we looked at international disputes and lawyers to say, what can the legal community do to hasten this pace of change? The goals of 2030 seem to be being pushed out to 2070 and other areas. But as we know, the law can play a tremendous facilitating role to hasten change. So now to the more dreary part of my presentation, but perhaps your booklet already contains it. But there are several regulatory changes which are most striking and I would say long overdue, which have compelled all individuals, especially investors, shareholders, and more particularly directors of companies, to recognize the compliance obligations that are now cast on the enterprise. These would include, for example, there's a provision under the Companies Act 134M, which mandates companies to include a report by the board of directors on conservation of energy, along with the annual financial statement. There's a rule in the company's account rules, which is a detailed mandate to the board to provide information regarding conservation of energy. There's the SEBI listing LODR regulations, where under regulation 34(2)F, there is a disclosure on opportunities, threats, risks, and concerns as part of their annual reports in relation to the environment. You also have disclosure requirements for issuance and listing of green debt securities issued by SEBI in 2017. And then there is a more integrated GRI standards and integrated reporting framework that is in vogue. The SEBI circular for business responsibility reporting, as far back as in 2015, noted that the adoption of responsible business practices in the interests of the social setup and environment as high as vital as their financial and operational performance. Duties have been cast on independent directors to keep themselves well informed about the company and the external environment in which it operates. Now, some of these terms of, for example, the environment has also been looked at more closely by our courts. And India is one of the countries in the world where the right to life under the Constitution includes a right to live in a clean environment. And the lessons of Bhopal are not forgotten by me. And the lessons of how quickly a complex corporate enterprise can slip into impunity in causing havoc in either environmental or human damage. These are not lessons that we can afford to forget. One wave of reforms after Bhopal was the introduction of the Air Act, the Water Act, and the various other environmental audits that took place before large projects. But it's been too long, from the early 80s. Now we're in the 2022s. But at least finally now there is a more integrated approach to some movement. There are these task forces as well on climate-related financial disclosures. And as Dr. Shalini pointed out, the business, the BRSR disclosures for the top 1,000 listed companies issued in May 2021 is pertinent. I'll quickly finish by saying that there's another project which I've been working on with a friend in Netherlands. He runs an enterprise called the Purpose Factory. And the idea is to, and we're hoping to bring it to India in some time. The idea is to identify a funnel, as it were, which can attract reflexive, thoughtful entrepreneurs to have sustainable business models, and then to attract equally conscious investors, bankers. And the banking industry has led the change some time ago. Green financing has been a high priority for many banks for, I would say, decades. But although the debt financing was available, the equity engines, or the rocket engines of equity, have finally been fired. And so although the banks were going on about green plans, if the equity investors weren't prioritizing it as much, then surely we saw several unaccountable business plans, or rather capital that chases businesses which don't only not return a financial, do not provide a financial return, but also do not account for their environmental impact. And I think this laissez-faire, do what you want, we'll still give you money to burn, kind of greed is good model is now showing its age finally. And hopefully all of these regulations give way to more conscientious and responsible businesses. Finally, we can have the best regulations, but it's ultimately people that matter. It's not laws, it's not words on paper. And so unless we imbibe the spirit of responsible behavior, no amount of regulation can help us. With that, thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time. Dr. Shalini, over to you.
So as Shreya said correctly, that no amount of regulations or laws can help the people if there is no self-discipline. And I think this is very correct, not in every area, not only with the businesses, but in every part of the life. I was just thinking about one question. Recently, there have been a lot happening by the state pollution control boards. They are going to the industries and trying to put the stuff wherever they are thinking that there is water pollution or any other kind of pollution happening. Then there is also NGT that is playing quite a vital role, and they are working with the states, and they really even have a power to guide even the state pollution control boards and the highest authorities to say whether you do this or you don't do this. So any views on that? Do you think that such practice can really can be helpful really to put the full stop to the kind of air pollution, the water pollution that's happening in our country?
That is necessary but not sufficient. And it is very easy to misdirect efforts in courts because the true interests of litigants is not often disclosed. And so in the name of an environmental concern, it might actually be a competitor's commercial interest that is being masqueraded. There may be also several people caught unawares in between. For example, for many years, I've had to help apartment dwellers who were asked why they did not put up STPs when their units were constructed 30 years ago, when there's no engineering possibility for an STP in the premises. And for that situation, them being hauled over hot coals before the NGT, and then suddenly, well, their children or elderly are in critical times, suddenly their electricity gets cut off, the water gets cut off. So, I'm afraid this sanction-driven approach quite often ends up with the music stopping, with very weak people holding the buck when the music stops. And while chief secretaries of states will say, will shout at their juniors to say, go show some action, I need to report back to the NGT. The NGT in Delhi is saying, look, show me action. Ultimately, the way all of this can translate can be fairly inefficient. So I think you mentioned earlier technology. The justice ecosystem is ripe for massive and permanent disruption using technology. And many of us are keenly looking at how justice processes can be deepened, can be made much more easily accessible, maybe made much more cost effective through the aid of tech. So I'm hoping that this green tech and justice tech will converge to have solutions that go beyond just Tariq pe Tariq before some tribunal or court. I hope that is a response to your question.
That's right. That's right. I think for the new age solutions, I think that's the way ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you for this input. I just wanted to request all the participants and the speakers also to kindly keep posting your questions in the chat box so that we can take it up while the speakers are here. And feel free to send your questions in the chat box. Over to Vaikunt to invite the speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini. Our last speaker for the day is Mr. Amit Deshmukh. He has over 22 years experience in building services engineering. He has worked on a wide range of prestigious international projects in the UK, France, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and India. His project expertise ranges from enabling design and engineering, the procurement and construction of luxury five-star hotels, state-of-the-art high-rise buildings, mixed-use commercial, residential, and retail buildings, hospitals, control rooms, data centers, and radio stations. Mr. Amit has an in-depth knowledge of multidisciplinary building design and the complexity of the building construction process. He provides innovative and practical design solutions by utilizing the latest technology to enhance the performance, sustainability, and economically feasibility of his projects. His specialism in tall buildings and building services design has seen him work on over 9 high-rise towers ranging between 60 and 117 stories, including the World Towers in Mumbai, one of which is the tallest residential tower in the world. And with that, I'd like to hand over the platform to you, sir.
Thanks, Vaikunt and Shalini, for a warm welcome. So good evening, everyone. I'll just start with the introduction. Myself, I'm basically a mechanical engineer, though Vaikunt has nicely narrated my CV here. So I'm a hardcore mechanical engineer, and when it comes to ESG, my responsibility increases in terms of operational carbon whenever, and we are into build design from almost 2 decades. So my journey specifically for this buzzword ESG started almost a year back when we were working with our other offices, overseas offices. Started with US and then cascaded down to UK. So when we were really working there at the starting on the frameworks and all, we were not that having faced the issues in terms of putting the frameworks, educating the clients, and putting our things ahead. But now, when these things are started cascading down to India specifically from last 6 months, and that's after COP26, after our government has announced our desire for reducing the CO2 and net zero, I think, and of course, SEBI has played an important role, as Shalini has already explained, about mandate of first 1,000 companies BSSR reporting. And I'm sure this is just a start. The first 1,000 will be a role model, and it will be actually cascaded down to the all listed companies at least to start with, and that things will move on. So I represented a company which is an engineering consultancy company spread across 23 offices over the world. So we have that advantage to understand and learn how other regions of the world are doing and how they are progressing on it. So if I have to really compare those currently with ongoing India, the things outside the India are a little easy because there are a lot of things which are driven from the government itself. So like US and UK, there are no choices like available, that people has to follow certain norms, corporate has to follow certain guidelines, and then they have to demonstrate that they're doing these frameworks and all. Now, when it comes to India, we are just starting. We are getting into the frameworks and all. I will just elaborate about the ESG in later part. So now, when we started this journey as a Bureau Happold a year back, we definitely has decided that we have to start and we have to lead by an example. So we were debating upon that, what should be the goals that we should start with. And if I have to just give an example, we have set across, the goals were debated almost over 6 months within the organization with various stakeholders and along with the clients which we deal into. So we finally come up to that we must have first ourselves as a commitment. So we took a pledge on three major aspects. So we have decided that we should reduce our operational carbon. When we say our office operational carbon emissions, at least to start with 25% by 2024, and aim to be net zero from carbon perspective by April 22, offsetting the residual emissions. The second thing we decided that whatever projects we will design, all build projects, new projects, to be net zero in terms of carbon operation by 2030. The third pledge, what we have decided is reduce the embodied carbon intensity of all new buildings and major retrofits infrastructure projects by 50% by 2030. Now, these are all, of course, the commitments we've taken as a company, which has to be followed across the practice. Now, when I talk about the targets in terms of Indian context, now you can imagine that when we have to cascade it down to our India business or Indian clients, and we have to educate. The start is the government mandate is 2070, and where we are talking about 2030. So of course, it's a long journey for everyone, for us. However, when we talked about this, we have decided to simplify the engineering instead of complicating it. So we followed normally a principle whenever we design is a lean, mean, and green philosophy. When we say lean, mean, and green, we look into normally aspect whatever we design or we offer a solution or whichever client we discuss, that how to be first when we talk about net zero, right? And we talk about how to reduce the CO2s, how to reduce the green gas emissions. So we started with little reverse process, that how to reduce these particular emissions at first place. Instead of first you design the buildings, and then you create a problem and then find a solution for a problem. So we started looking into how do we really at first place reduce the problem. So your journey becomes little easy. It's not that easy, but it's little easy. So go for a lean approach. And to take a lean approach, earlier we were talking about science-based targets. So that's a really good term, and we are actually putting into the practical way. So if you talk about the current the industry evolution, everybody is talking about database decisions, and this data is available, but it's not in a one form. It is in a scattered form. So if you talk about tech giants, just take an example of Vodafone, because when we are debating, Vodafone has got centers across the India, across the world. Now their data centers, their centers, call centers or their customer centers are very specific. They are not very huge centers. But even in city, they may have 5 customer centers. In a country, they may have 1,000. In world, they may have maybe a million centers. Now, when they start collecting the data together, and they start applying to their own, within their own business, they start realizing the value of that data. The value of the data, that how to optimize the space, how to standardize the things, and how to what should be what they should not do, and what should they do in terms of the designing of their new incoming. And we have worked actually with Vodafone for a few of their call centers, and we have also realized that there is a lot of optimization is possible just if you correlate the existing data. You did not to do any high-end engineering. There is no need of putting a lot of softwares. Just analyze the data and put it in front of, put it on a table, and then design it basis to that. So the important thing moving forward for us is we in India, because if you talk about construction industry growth, the construction, we are talking about $1 trillion economy by 2030, a GDP growth, and year on year 9% to next 10 years. You can imagine the Indian economy where it is going to touch, and that is not anything surprise, because we have a huge opportunity for development, because other Western countries has reached to the peak of their development, whereas we have just started that journey. The funds will come in. Now, when the funds are coming in, because we will require funds, all these funds are directed by only one word, that is a green fund. You talk about if you talk about SEBI has given a good advantage for the green funds earlier this year. BSSR launching is again an early step by us, which is really a good step. The foreign direct investments, we are talking to not only clients, we are also being approached globally. And because of our other offices are getting approached, and they are talking about pan world, the investment which will be coming from, say, outside world, I will not name the parties, but those funds are in billions and trillions. The only one mandate, the fund should go to a proper cause, which Mr. Thangaveri was saying. They will give these funds, but there has to be a proper cause and proper for the people who are using it for a cause. So be it construction, be it industry, or be it for anything, the funds getting will not be easy if you are not thinking of green or ESG in future. If you are on a right path, trust me, the funds raising should not be an issue, and people will enjoy that ride, the things. So now, if I have to talk about clientele, so we deal in India specifically with corporates, we deal with construction industry, and we have been also approached by a few industries. Now, if you talk about these 3 sectors, all these 3 sectors has got different operating profiles. Corporates are really easy to handle, because when you talk about ESG, the governance, which is the major part, is already inbuilt in the blood of corporate. So you need not to do much thing. They have the science-based target. What you need to help them is about just first putting the first thing about what is the overall targets and how you are going to achieve to it. When it comes to a construction, the things become little tough because the construction in industry in India, whether we like or we don't like, it's driven by a market which is selling. It's a seller's market. So the construction industry will require funds definitely for a growth perspective. The question what they are having whenever we are doing all these things, what will be my selling price and will that be affordable by a person in that particular area or where they are selling? Now they may not have that answer because everybody has to lift that particular bar and ask that question that when you are doing it, whether you have a choice. Earlier you were having a choice because you used to get a money. Now you are not going to get that money. Either you fund your own money and then complete the projects, or you just do the compliance to the ESG requirements and the whoever given you finance and take the funds. So those things are coming from last 6 months. If I see the trends, the trend has changed and people have at least moved to step 1 of deciding the overall targets that yes, we are doing this and we will do this. Now the next step 2 is what is the time period and how they are going to achieve it. Third is like industry. I was talking about the example of textile industry, and the textile industry, when somebody has approached us and we have just asked you what is it that you are looking into this, because currently your factory is running, so everything is smooth, so you will not be even needing the funds. So the issue there was wherever they were supplying their products, the purchasers of those products are now started talking about it, that how are you ensuring the ESG norms. So that means that tells us that you talk from a pin to element, a pin to elephant. Everybody in this industry, because people may think that I am not related to this ESG or a social governance or a sustainability. However, you may not be directly related, you may not be needing the funds, but you can become a part of the value chain or a supply chain, which can be questioned in a coming time, because, and that is how it's a spread. And that is what I was talking about, the examples of Western market, that is US and UK. When these countries started, that these particular issues were there at the beginning, and now they have actually gone to the roots of it and they are actually pinpointing. So the upper portion is done. Now the another thing is, when we talk about net zero, we always talk about operational energy, operational carbon, and we are not thinking on embodied carbon. So we are also now educating our clients and other things on embodied carbon. That operational carbon everybody is talking about. Yes, you be lean, you try to offset within the your own projects, or you offset it to the bonds or something like that. But when it comes to embodied carbon journey has just started, because many of people do not understand what is embodied carbon means, which goes into the construction of your building. Either it's a construction of your civil construction or your building environments, your fire protection, air conditioning, everything consumes the carbon. So that embodied carbon also will be there. So we are not only talking about operational carbon net zero, we are talking about embodied carbon zero, and how do we really minimize that. And that comes to a last thing is net zero versus net positive. So if you talk about, we are talking about net zero, Western countries are talking about net positive. And I'm sure these things will cascade down to India, that yes, we have talked a lot about net zero. Now let's talk about how do we give it to someone else? How do I become net positive water and I start giving water to my neighbors? How do I become net positive in terms of energy and I start giving it to somebody else and start earning it? So I think this is a little short summary from the current, our experience. I hope that was really useful for you guys, all of you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, I think